Welcome viewers to this session on economics. On economics today, we are looking at the theory of demand and supply. Please come along with me. What is demand and what is the law of demand and that of supply? Demand refers to the quantity of a good or a service consumers are willing and able to buy at various prices. What a consumer is willing to buy at a given price, that is demand. Okay? There's also what we call effective demand, which means the ability or the capacity of a consumer to pay for a particular good or a service at the time of demand. That's effective demand. The law of demand states that all things being equal, that is in economics, ceteris paribus. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. In other words, all things being equal, because in certain cases, things may not be equal. For instance, if you are talking about an abnormal good like luxurious good, luxurious item or ostentatious good, this law may not work because things are not equal. Ostentatious good like gold, the higher the price, the more people want to buy because they assume that the higher the price, the more quality it possesses. All right? But ordinarily, we are talking generally. Ceteris paribus, all else being equal. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded, and vice versa. The lower the price, the more quantity will be demanded for. Okay, that is demand, the meaning, and of course, supply and the law of demand and the meaning of demand. Let's look at supply. Okay, we are trying to summarize it within the space we have in this session because after this class, I'm going to have some question and answer session with you. So please follow me. Supply refers to the quantity producers are willing and able to sell at various prices. The quantity a seller is willing to sell at various prices is called supply. So what's the law of supply? The law of supply says that the higher the price, the greater the quantity supplied. In other words, a seller will be willing to sell more at a higher price in order to make what? More profits. And vice versa. The lower the price, the lower the quantity supply. Ceteris paribus, all things being equal. So far, we have seen in the simplest form the meaning of demand, the meaning of supply, the law of demand, the law of supply. Now, let's look at determinants of demand and supply. Let's start with that of demand. What are those factors that determine how many quantity is being bought by a consumer or how many service is being enjoyed by a consumer? The first thing we are looking at is the price. The price is a major factor at the short run. When we talk in economics, we have the short run and the long run. Okay, at the short run, these factors affect demand. Price. Price is the major factor that decided or determined the quantity demanded by a consumer, just according to the law of demand. Another one is income. The available resources, your disposable income, will also in a long way affect the quantity demanded. Another one is taste. Your taste or your fashion for a particular product, your taste will decide whether you consume that product or not. And remember, it's becoming an economic nature such that as you earn more money, your taste changes for higher and more expensive goods. Another factor that can determine demand are the prices of related goods, whether they are complementary, that is joint demand, or whether they are composite demand. Okay? These prices of other goods can also affect what? Quantity demand, and as well as the expectations, the utility, the satisfaction to be derived from that particular product or service. Okay, now for the supplies, what are the factors that determine quantity supply? The first one we're looking at is the cost of production. When the cost of production is high, the extent is that you produce less. But when the cost of production is low, you produce more because you make use of the available material and resources to generate your finished goods. Another factor is technology. The presence of technology in production can enhance level of productivity. So it's a major factor that affects supply. The number of sellers also affects supply. The more people in the market, the more they produce, the more they supply for sale. Government policies also have a way of affecting supply, for instance, tax, okay, and as well as the expectations of the supplier. So here we have itemized the determinants of demand as well as determinant of supply. Please listen quietly with me and follow me because I told you that I'm going to have question and answer session after this session. Okay? Demand and supply schedules and curves. All right? What is a schedule? We did a video earlier on this channel about basic tools for economic analysis. And we mentioned schedule, we mentioned pie chart, bar chart, line graph, and what have you. So please, you can check up for this video on our channel. All right? What is a schedule? A demand schedule is a table showing quantity demanded or quantity supply at different prices. So a demand schedule is like a table. Look at my screen. It's like a table where you have the price. The price could be in naira or could be in dollar. And you have the quantity demanded or quantity supply, in which case, all right? You can have them together like this in case you want to draw a curve, right? So you can have the price at 10, at 20, at 30, at 40, and 50, all right? Remember, the law of demand says the higher the price, the greater the quantity. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. And the lower the price, the greater the quantity demanded. Let's assume at 100, at 10 naira, they're able to demand for 100. When it has 20 naira, it will fall to 80. When it has 30 naira, it has fallen towards 60. And when it has 40, it has fallen toward 40. And when it has 50, it has fallen toward 20. You can see it's in reverse. It's inversely proportional. When you talk about law of demand, relationship between price and quantity demanded is inversely proportional. But if it is quantity supply, it is directly proportional in the sense that at higher price, more is supplied. More is supplied. And as the price keeps increasing, more will also be supplied. For instance, as this case now, we have 10 naira, maybe 20 is supplied at 20, 40 is supplied, the opposite, 60 is supplied, 80 is supplied, and of course, what happened? 100 is supplied. So you can see that the relationship between price and quantity supply is direct relationship, directly proportional. What price between demand is what? Indirect or inversely proportional. Okay? As one is going up, the other is coming down. For demand, where for supply, they were both going simultaneously up, up, or down, down. So this is a typical schedule, a demand schedule or supply schedule. That is a table that shows the quantity demanded or quantity supply at different prices. Okay, and you draw a demand curve or a supply curve from a demand schedule. Okay, so from this table, we can plot a demand curve or a supply curve from this table. For instance, if you have it this way, you have your y-axis, this is 0, and you have x-axis. Your y-axis where you have your price in naira. Remember, your y and x-axis should be labeled appropriately. Okay, so you have your 10 naira, you have your 20 naira, you have your 30, you have your 40, and of course you have your 50 based on this demand schedule. Okay, then you can have your quantity in this way. You have 20, you have 40, you have 60, you have 80, and of course you have 100. So if you are to plot a demand curve, remember, demand curve is a graphical representation of the schedule. Demand curve is graphical representation of the schedule. The same thing apply what? To the supply curve. And here, like I stated here, demand curve slopes downwards, while supply curve slopes upward. Let's see it in practical on the screen as I plot the curve from this particular schedule. Okay, when the price was 10, 100 was purchased. So we have it this way. Okay, 100 here. When the price was 20, we have 80 purchased. And when the price was 30, we have 60 purchased. Okay, and when the price was 40, we have 40 purchased. When the price was 50, we have 20 purchased. So what to do is just to connect all the points together. And what do you have? You have what? A demand curve. And that shows you demand slopes downwards. Okay, right on this place also, from this table given to you, the schedule, you can also plot what? A supply curve. All right, when the price was 10 naira, supply was what? Was 10, somewhere here. When the price was 20, supply was 40 here. When the price was 30, supply was 60. And when the price was 80, supply was 40, this way. Okay, so we have this connection here. And when the price was 50, supply was 100, somewhere here. Okay, so what do? You just connect the joint point together. And what do we have now? Wow, this is supply curve. So you can see here, supply is sloping upward right, a normal supply curve. Likewise, demand is what? Sloping downward right, a normal demand curve, because you could have abnormal demand, particularly when you're talking about ostentatious. All right, so this is typical of demand and supply schedules and, of course, curves. I use this schedule here to plot the curve both for supply and also for what? For demand. Two of them were plotted on the same spot. And as an economics student, you should have known that the point where they meet is called what? The equilibrium point. The equilibrium point, okay? And the price is at 30, while the quantity is at what? 60. You can see it here. So at 30, we have equilibrium, where quantity demand. Equilibrium is the price where quantity demand equals to quantity supply. All right? That's what we have on the table. And also we have the point here where the curve intercepted themselves, supply and demand curve. Okay? You can also read further on this to get better understanding by yourself, particularly when you're talking about abnormality in demand and that of what? Of supply. Okay, so let's move on now. I hope you are still with me. Remember, I told you earlier that I'm going to have question and answer session immediately after this topical discussion. All right, so let's look at it. Market equilibrium and effect of shifts. Okay, equilibrium occurs where demand equals supply. I just showed it to you both on the table as well on the curve that I drew. I just cleaned up from the screen. Okay, the shift in demand or supply curve change the equilibrium price and quantity. Now, when we talk about shifts in demand, for instance, let me show you again in a diagram. This, as you have seen earlier, is a demand curve. And just as you have it this way, okay? We have it this way, right? So when we talk about shift in demand, shift, this is movement along demand curve. This movement along demand curve, okay? This is a movement along demand curve, up and down. And this is brought about because of the changes in price, all right, of the commodity. But when we talk about shift in demand, we are talking about other factors affecting what? Demand, such a way that the price does not change, but the demand continues to change. The same thing also affects supply. So in this case, we call it shift in demand. Other factors are responsible for this shift. You can see this is the original demand curve, DO. This is another demand curve, D1. This is another demand curve, D2. Okay, so a shift from DO to D1, that is a backward shift. It's called backward or leftward shift. Backward or leftward shift in demand. A leftward shift in demand means what? A decrease in demand, all right? From QO to Q1, there's a decrease in demand, all right? Then we also have a rightward or forward shift, all right? This one is what? An increase in demand from QO to what? To Q2. So what I give to you here as my explanation of equilibrium and effect of shift is what I just explained here. The same also applies to what? To supply. If it's supply, remember supply is the other way around. Slopes upward from left to right. Okay, so it's going to be opposite of that of what? Of the supply. All right, just like the first one I did for you when I was explaining the equilibrium. So this is supply curve. So in this case, you are going to have more than one supply curve. So that will lead to what? A leftward shift or a rightward shift. Leftward shift is backward shift. Rightward shift is forward shift. And the rightward means increase in supply or increase in demand. The leftward means decrease in supply or demand. I hope you can see it on the screen. Please, you can go more study on this to get a better understanding. But don't forget, I'm going to ask you some questions immediately after this session, right? Price elasticity of demand and supply. When we say price elasticity, we are talking about the measurement of the quantity demanded in response to changes in price. The measurement of the quantity demanded in response to changes in price. Okay? Like I say, price elasticity of demand equals what? The percentage change in demand all over percentage change in price. This is what they call price elasticity. All right? The same thing applies if it's demand, it could also be supply. Are you with me? We could also have income elasticity of demand. In other words, your disposable income availability, how it affects what? Your demand. Are you with me? The same thing also affects what? Supply. So what are we saying? These are the laws and the calculations of price elasticity of demand and supply. So please, you can go more to study on this to get, in fact, we have done a question on this. There was a session we did on this channel. Maybe you check on it to get it. We did both price elasticity as well as what? Disposable income elasticity when we are discussing the national income. Please, you can check up on this and then you get better understanding before you check up on our video section. Okay, now let's look at some multiple choice questions on this topic. Like I mentioned earlier, I've already given you some foundation and basic understanding of this. So let's see how we're able to assimilate what was learned now. The law of demand states that A, demand rises as price rises. Demand is independent of price. Demand falls as price rises. Demand and price are positively related. If you follow me in my explanation, you agree with me that the option correct answer for this question is C. Demand falls as price rises. Remember I mentioned when I was explaining to you that there is what we call inverse proportional relationship between demand and supply. As demand and price, between price, as price is going up, demand is coming down, and as price is coming down, demand is going up. So the correct answer there is option C. The next question, which of the following is not a determinant of demand? In other words, which of these factors does not determine the quantity demanded? A, consumer income, price of the good, cost of production, taste, and preference. Okay? Now, for my explanation on the determinant of demand, you know I mentioned all this. The only one that's odd out here is cost of production. Why? Cost of production only affects what? The supply and not demand. Okay? The price of the good, high or low, will affect quantity demanded. Right? The income, disposable income of the consumer will also affect what it demands. Its taste and preference will affect it. The cost of production is only applicable to supply and not demand. Okay? Let's see the next question. A supply curve usually slopes. I just showed it to you in one of my explanation. Now this is supply curve. Slopes upward right. Upward right. You can see it upward right from the point of origin O, slope upward right. Okay? So the answer is option D. Option D is the answer. Right? If it's demand curve now, demand curve is what? It will be downward right. In other words, from y axis is flowing downward towards x axis. Okay? I just showed it to you also when I was explaining to you this topic. All right? Then the next question, let's see. What does a rightward shift in demand curve indicate? I also explained this to you when I drew this diagram, and I told you that when you talk about shift in demand or in supply, it is not as a result of change in price. No, because the price is constant, whereas as a result of other factors that affect either demand or supply. Factors like taste, like preference, like fashion, like income, like this tax. Okay, these are the other factors, or cost of production. There are other factors that can affect demand or supply that bring about that shift. And I told you, I show you something like this. Please watch the video from the beginning for you to understand this. That could be rightward shift or leftward shift. If you are going to the right, which is forward, that is increase in what? Demand. And if you are going to the left, which is backward shift, that is what? That is decrease in demand. So for my explanation, rightward shift, and from this diagram, means what? Increase in demand. Increase in demand. So option C is our correct answer. You are increasing your demand from this point here, QO, to this point here, Q2. Okay? Increase in demand, option C. All right? Let's see the next question. Market equilibrium occurs where quantity demand is zero, quantity supply is zero, demand equals supply, price is at maximum. Of course, now the diagram I showed to you, the interjection point of demand and supply is equilibrium point, and the price where they meet is what? Equilibrium price, and the quantity is equilibrium what? Quantity. So that is demand equals supply. Option C is the correct answer. Let's see the next question. I hope you're enjoying this session. Please subscribe more to this channel to get more of this and many more. The responsiveness of quantity demand to a change in price is called demand ratio, marginal utility, elasticity of demand, substitution effects. We just mentioned it earlier. We'll call it price elasticity of demand, price ED. So the answer is elasticity of demand. Marginal utility has nothing to do with it. It's talking about the additional benefits or the additional enjoyment of one additional product you bought. That's marginal utility you enjoy or consume, right? So the option for this question is elasticity of demand. Let's see the next question. If the price of a good increases and demand does not change, it is said to be. If the price of a good increases and demand does not, it is said to be. Okay? In other words, the price increase, but the demand does not change. Demand still remains the same. If demand did not change, we say demand is what? Inelastic. Remember, we have elastic, we have inelastic. When you say elastic, elastic means what? Any change in price bring about change in quantity demand. But inelastic means when there's change in price, there's no change in demand. And that's what this question is talking about. That's inelastic, does not change. Okay? So for this elastic, we say E, small letter E, is greater than 1. While for inelastic, we say small letter E is less than 1. Okay? And the degree of elasticity also matters. It could be perfectly elastic. That is higher, far higher than 1. It could be 2 or 3. Then it says perfectly what? Elastic. So for this answer, the correct answer here, this question, the correct answer here is what? We said demand does not change, perfectly inelastic. Option B. Option B is the correct answer. Perfectly inelastic. Okay, so let's see the next question now. Which factors does not affect the elasticity of demand? Does not. In other words, all the factors here affect elasticity of demand except one. Time, number of producers, availability of substitutes, proportion of income spent. Number of producers, availability of substitutes, If there's a substitute, of course, now you know that there will be change in demand. Time, what you want now, you may not want in the next few minutes. Okay? Then proportion of income spent, the availability of income, your disposable income will also affect your demand. So what do you pick here? You pick number of all producers. At the short run, number of producers may not have effect on elasticity of demand, except at the long run. Okay? So the answer for this question is option B. Let's see the next question. A demand schedule is, what is a schedule in economics? A schedule is what? A table. A table that shows the relationship between price and demand, or price and supply. So let's see for demand. A supply timetable, a list of goods and services, a table showing quantity demanded at various prices, a production chart. So from what I just said and the explanation I gave earlier in this video, the answer is what? Option C. A table showing quantity demanded at various prices. All right, let's see the next question. What happens when there is excess demand in the market? When there's excess demand in the market, that means the goods are too many in the market. What do you think will happen? When a particular good is too much in the market, what do you think will happen? Surplus develops, equilibrium is reached, price tends to rise, price tends to fall. Of course, not simple economics. When goods are too many in the market, the implication is that the price tends to fall. Particularly if it's a perishable item, the seller will want to bring down the price so as to sell it faster and get their money back. Even if it's not perishable, instead of these goods being tied down, tying their capital down, they will want to bring it down a bit so as to encourage buyer to buy and then clear up their store to get other goods. Price tends to fall. Option D is the correct answer. Let's see the next one. Which of the following can shift supply curve? Can bring about shift in supply curve? Remember we said primarily shift in supply curve is other factors, not necessarily price. It is not price that bring about shift. Price only bring about movement along curve. But when you talk about one curve shifting to another curve, it's not about price because price is constant. It's about what? Other factors. Change in consumer income. So we're talking about supply, you know, not demand. Change in taste, improvement in technology, fall in production. The major factor that bring about shift is improvement in technology. As technology improves, you see yourself, level of productivity is expected to also what? Become efficient and possibly increase. So option C is the correct answer. The next question. A good with many substitutes tends to have, when a good has many substitutes, in other words, if you don't buy good A, you can always buy many other ones, B, C, D. They are substitute. They can replace this particular good. Say, for instance, Milo. If you don't buy Milo as a choco drink, you could buy Bonvita, you could buy other many choco drinks, all right, in the market. So what do you think will be the effects on that particular good? Is it inelastic demand, unitary demand, elastic demand, or negative elastic? The answer is what? Elastic demand. In other words, the response will be changing, will be seen, okay, because there are substitutes. If the price of Milo should go up, people will move to Bonvita, move to Cowbell, move to other products, all right? So its demand is elastic. Elastic means it's greater than 1. That means it can change. Elastic can change, all right? Let's move to the next question. When the price of sugar rises, demand for tea falls. The goods are demand for sugar rise, demand for tea falls. Sugar and tea, what kind of good are they? They are joint demand. Huh? What's another word for joint? Complementary demand. Huh? When I say complementary or joint demand means when two or more products are combined together to generate a utility, a satisfaction, right? You don't just lick a sugar. If you don't put the sugar in, some don't take sugar with tea anyway. But we believe that these two are expected to combine, like you talk about swallow and soup. They are about soup. They are combined together to give what? A satisfaction. So they are complementary demand. Okay? So the option says a substitute. Substitute is like Bonfita and Milo, they can substitute themselves. Complement demand. The other one say inferior goods. The other one say independent goods. The correct answer is what? Complement demand. They are jointly demanded. Okay, let's see the next question. The point where supply and demand curves intersect is called, I just showed it to you in a diagram when I was explaining to you earlier. And this point is called what? Equilibrium point. Why this one is called equilibrium price? This is called equilibrium quantity. Okay, so let's see. Break-even point, equilibrium, supply junction, demand limit. The answer here is what? Equilibrium. Option B. Okay, equilibrium. If I properly put, it's supposed to be equilibrium point. Okay, where supply curve intersect demand curve. All right. Hope you're enjoying the class. Please subscribe to this channel for more of this. When price elasticity is greater than 1, demand is, I've explained this 2 or 3 times now when I was trying to bring understanding for 2 other questions. When price elasticity is greater than 1, demand is said to be what? Elastic, inelastic, unitary, perfectly elastic. Demand is said to be what? Elastic. Okay? But this is now becoming very great, like 2, like 3, 4. Then it says what? Perfectly elastic. Okay? If it's less than 1, we say it's what? Inelastic. So the option answer for this is A. Demand is what? Elastic. It changes. All right? Let's see the next question. A decrease in production cost will likely, what will happen when the cost of production falls? A. Shift in the supply curve left. B. Reduce supply. C. Shift supply curve right. D. Increase demand. You know, we're talking about supply now. Cost of production is applicable to supply, not demand. So that D is already up point. And remember, I just plotted a curve for you when I was talking about shift in supply. Okay? And I told you that rightward shift is also forward shift. Right, forward shift. That's plus, positive. That's increase in supply. All right? While leftward shift, which is backward, negative shift, that's decrease in supply. Are you with me? Very well. So if you understand that, what will happen when the cost of production falls? When there's decrease in cost of production, what do you think will happen? Of course, we are going to produce more goods. All right? More goods will be produced. So what kind of shift are we experiencing? We should experience a rightward positive forward shift, which will lead to what? Increase in quantity supply. So the answer to this question is option C. Option C. Shift the supply curve to the right, forward, positive, increase in quantity supply. Let's see the next question. A perfectly elastic supply curve is usually horizontal, like this. Remember I told you that's an abnormal supply curve. A perfectly elastic supply curve. If it's demand is usually vertical. If it's perfectly elastic, all right? So the answer there is option C, horizontal. Let's see the next one now. Okay, the next question. The degree of responsiveness of supply to a change in price is known as, we just answer a question on demand related to this. The same statement was asked for demand. So this one is for supply. The answer is what? Elasticity of supply. Elasticity of supply. Somebody said, what about cross? Cross is when you are talking about the demand, the quantity supply of one product and the price of another product. You are crossing them. But this one, the speed of supply to a change in price is what? Elasticity of supply. The option there is option B. Okay? While we're getting closer to round off this session. Let's look at this next question. If demand is perfectly elastic, an increase in price will cause quantity demand too. I've explained this over and over in the course of this session. When it says perfectly elastic, it means any little change in price will bring about what? Reduction in quantity demand. Okay? That's perfectly elastic. Easily change. Any change in price brings about what? Change in quantity demand there. So what do we have? Decrease in quantity demanded to what? A decrease in quantity demand. Option A. As I take the last question for this session, let's look at question number 20. A steep demand curve indicates that demand is, when it says steep, steep means it's not sharp. The slope is going gently, not so sharp. Are you there? So demand indicates that demand is perfectly elastic, relatively inelastic, relatively elastic, interelastic is relatively elastic. That is relatively will be changing as the price is changing. Option C is the correct answer. So with this, we have come to the end of this session. Please, you can go to the video again to get the summary explanation I gave, and also go to the question and answer session for perfection of this particular topic. While I see you next class. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sure you enjoyed the content you just watched. To see more episodes as that, preparing you for your oncoming exams, smash the subscribe button on this channel right now and visit the playlist that we've made for you, covering over 50 type of different exams, including JAMB, WAEC, Cacao, NET, IALT, and the likes like that. Also, in every video you watch, we have the link to our apps where you can download on Google Play Store and Apple Play Store and practice hundreds of past questions for free.